I still remember the sound. That sharp hiss that made my heart drop to the ground. I was just coming home from picking up groceries when I pulled into my driveway and suddenly felt my truck tilt slightly. The steering wheel got heavier, and when I stepped out, I saw my front tire was flat. Not just flat, but torn open, like someone had taken a knife to it. At first, I thought maybe it was just bad luck. Maybe I had run over something on the road. But when I bent down to inspect, my eyes caught the shiny glint of metal right under the edge of my driveway. Spike strips. Brand new, heavy-duty spike strips screwed directly into the concrete of my own property. My heart pounded. Who would do this? I whispered under my breath, and then I heard it. A sharp, smug laugh coming from across the street. Looks like your fancy truck finally got what it deserves. It was her. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. She was standing there, arms folded, lips curled into a smirk as if she had just watched the best comedy show of her life. I tried to stay calm. Karen, did you do this? Did you put spike strips on my driveway? She raised her chin, her voice dripping with arrogance. Of course I did. You parked that noisy, oversized truck in plain sight like this is some country farm. This is a community, and I'm sick of it ruining our street's aesthetic. I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to yell. That's my driveway, my property. You don't have any right to put anything there. Karen laughed again, louder this time. Oh, I have every right. As the HOA president, I get to enforce the rules. And I'm telling you now, if you don't get rid of that truck, you'll keep losing tires until you do. My jaw dropped. This wasn't just HOA nitpicking. This was sabotage. Criminal. But the arrogance in her eyes told me she thought she was untouchable. That night, I couldn't sleep. My wife, Linda, sat beside me, worry in her eyes. This is going too far, Mark, she whispered. First the letters, then the warnings, and now this. She's crossed the line. I sighed, running my hands through my hair. I know, sweetheart. But if I go after her without proof, the HOA will back her up. They always do. Linda took my hand, her voice trembling. Then we'll get proof. You can't let her walk all over us. Her words lit something inside me. She was right. This wasn't just about a truck or a driveway anymore. This was about dignity, about standing up for ourselves so the next morning. Before I fixed the tire, I installed a small security camera hidden in my garage window, pointed directly at the driveway. I wanted to catch her in the act. For 2 days, nothing happened. Karen passed by a few times, glaring at my house like a hawk circling prey, but she didn't approach. I began to think maybe she'd had her fun and moved on. But on the third night, just past midnight, the camera caught it. There she was, creeping across the street with a flashlight in one hand and a box of sharp gleaming strips in the other. She bent down, kneeling at the edge of my driveway. Drilling them back in after I had removed the old ones, my blood boiled as I watched the footage. The sheer smugness on her face, the deliberate way she screwed each piece in it, was undeniable proof. The next morning, I walked over to her yard, phone in hand. Karen, we need to talk. She came out, sipping her coffee like she was on vacation. What is it this time, Mark? Another flat tire? Maybe you should consider a smaller car. I took a deep breath, then showed her the video. The color drained from her face, but only for a moment. She quickly regained her composure, smirking again. That doesn't prove anything. Besides, the HOA board will believe me over you. They always do. And the worst part? She was right. That evening, the HOA called an emergency meeting. I sat in the stuffy little clubhouse, surrounded by board members, most of whom were Karen's friends. She strutted in, her heels clicking against the floor, and sat at the head of the table like a queen addressing her. Subjects. Mark here has been causing quite the stir, she began, accusing me of vandalism and harassment, all because he refuses to follow the rules of our community. I stood, my voice firm. I have video proof that Karen installed spike strips on my driveway. This isn't about rules. This is about safety. What if an ambulance had to get to my house? What if a child ran across my driveway? Murmurs filled the room, some shocked, others skeptical. Karen raised her hand, silencing them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just another attempt to undermine my authority. We all know Mark has been a problem with his truck, his attitude, his disregard for the HOA's vision. The board nodded, some reluctantly, some eagerly. I could feel the walls closing in. But then, from the back of the room, Linda stood up. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the noise like a blade. You all sit here and nod because you're afraid of her. But let me ask you this. If it were your tire, if it were your child who tripped and fell on those spikes, would you still defend her? The room fell silent. Karen's smirk faltered. For the first time, doubt flickered in the board's eyes, and in that moment, I knew the tide was about to turn. The silence in the clubhouse that night lingered like heavy fog. For the first time, Karen didn't look untouchable. She shifted in her chair, her smirk thinning as the board members avoided her eyes. Linda's words had pierced something deeper than any argument I could have made. But just as I thought the tide might turn, Karen slammed her hand on the table. Enough of this nonsense. You're all forgetting who keeps this community in order. Without me, this place would fall apart. Do you want junk trucks and weeds everywhere? Do you want this neighborhood to turn into a dump? The board mumbled uneasily, caught between fear and reason. One older gentleman, Mr. Harris, cleared his throat. Karen, I've lived here for 30 years. Never in all that time have I seen something as dangerous as spike strips on someone's driveway. That's not order, that's reckless. A hush fell over the room. Karen's eyes narrowed. So, you're siding with him now? Mr. Harris straightened his back. I'm siding with what's right. That small moment gave me hope. But Karen wasn't finished. She leaned forward, glaring at me. Mark, if you think some grainy video and dramatic speech will take me down, you're sorely mistaken. I've handled bigger problems than you, and trust me, you will regret crossing me. Back home, Linda squeezed my hand. She's cornered. You saw it. They're not as loyal as she thinks. I nodded, though unease gnawed at me. Karen wasn't the type to retreat quietly. People like her, once their control slips, they get dangerous. 2 days later, my fear proved true. I walked out to grab the morning paper and froze. My entire lawn was torn up. Deep gouges in the grass, shredded flower beds, tire tracks crisscrossing the yard. Someone had driven over it deliberately, multiple times. Linda gasped. Oh my God, Mark. And there she was again. Karen stood across the street, phone in hand, recording like it was some neighborhood crime documentary. Look at this mess, she shouted, her voice dripping with fake outrage. This is what happens when people don't respect the community. Trucks, dirt, chaos. I'll be showing this to the board. I felt my face burn. You did this, Karen? You drove across my lawn? She laughed. Prove it. Nobody saw me. That's when I remembered I still had the security camera. I ran inside, pulled up the footage, and there it was. Karen's car, headlights off, swerving wildly across my yard in the dead of night. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, my stomach churned. She wasn't just harassing us anymore. She was escalating. That afternoon, I went straight to the police station. Officer Daniels, a steady man with kind eyes, watched the video carefully. When it finished, he leaned back, folding his arms. This isn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This is vandalism and property damage. You can press charges. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Daniels leaned forward, lowering his voice. But I'll be honest with you, Mark. People like her. They're slippery. She'll try to spin this as enforcement of HOA rules. She might even convince some of your neighbors to testify against you. If you go this route, be ready for a fight. I swallowed hard. I don't care. I can't let her terrorize us anymore. Daniels nodded. Then we'll take it from here. That evening, just as the sun dipped low, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Karen stood there with 2 HOA board members behind her. She waved a piece of paper in my face. Congratulations, she sneered. The board has voted. You're fined $5,000 for property damage, and for creating a hostile environment, pay up. We'll put a lien on your house. I stared at her, stunned. You destroyed my yard and I'm the one fined. She smirked. That's how it works when you break the rules. Before I could answer, headlights swept across the driveway. A police cruiser pulled up. Officer Daniels stepped out. Karen Whitmore, he asked. She blinked, her smugness faltering. Yes. What is this about? Daniels held up a clipboard. You're under investigation for vandalism and endangering public safety. I'll need you to come with me. For the first time, Karen's confidence cracked. She sputtered, turning to the board members. Are you just going to stand there? Do something. But they looked away. The spell she had over them was breaking. At the station, she was questioned and released pending further investigation. But the news spread like wildfire. The once untouchable queen of the HOA was suddenly vulnerable. Her reputation unraveling, yet even cornered, she refused to back down. The next day, a letter appeared in my mailbox written in Karen's sharp, looping handwriting. You think you've won, Mark, but this isn't over. You've started a war you can't finish. Linda's hands shook as she read it. She's obsessed. What if she really does something worse? I held her close, my voice firm, even though my heart pounded. Then I'll be ready. She can't keep running from the truth forever. That night, as the crickets chirped outside and the neighborhood lay in uneasy quiet, I sat on the porch staring at Karen's house. Her lights were on, shadows pacing behind the curtains. This wasn't just about a truck, or even the HOA anymore. This was about power, control, and fear. Karen thrived on intimidation, but for the first time she was the one who looked afraid. I didn't know how it would end, but deep down, I had a feeling. The handcuffs were closer than she realized. The morning after Karen's threatening letter, I woke up to the sound of banging on my garage door. At first, I thought it was a branch or maybe the wind, but when I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. Someone had spray painted across the garage in big, red letters, "Rule Breaker." Linda came running behind me, covering her mouth in shock. Mark, this has gone too far. She's losing it. I clenched my fists. My truck, my yard, now my home, it was all being targeted like I was some kind of criminal. And the worst part? Karen still strutted around the neighborhood like she owned it, waving at people, pretending to be the perfect neighbor. I called Officer Daniels immediately. He came out, inspected the paint, and sighed. She's pushing boundaries. Each time, it's escalating. If she keeps this up, she'll trap herself. Just keep documenting everything. Don't retaliate, no matter how much you want to. It was easier said than done. Every time I saw her smug face, every time I heard her gossiping loudly about me to neighbors, it took everything I had not to explode. That evening, we hosted a small cookout in the backyard for a few close neighbors, the ones Karen hadn't poisoned against us. We needed support, and honestly, we needed a distraction from the constant tension. As we sat around the table, one of my neighbors, Carol, leaned forward. You know, Mark, she's not just targeting you. Last month, she'll fine us $500 for having wind chimes. Said they were a noise violation. Another neighbor chimed in. She threatened to sue me for putting up a bird feeder. A bird feeder, for crying out loud. Hearing their stories lit a fire in me. I wasn't alone. Karen's reign of terror stretched farther than I realized. Linda squeezed my hand under the table. You see? Everyone's tired of her. She's not as powerful as she thinks. But Karen wasn't about to let that sense of unity grow. The very next day, I came home from running errands and froze in my driveway. Lying in front of my garage wasn't a flat tire this time. It was worse. A row of rusty nails, broken glass, and more spike strips carefully laid out in a line. My truck would have been shredded to pieces if I hadn't noticed. My chest tightened with rage. I looked across the street, and sure enough, there she was, agancing on her porch with a glass of wine, pretending to scroll on her phone. I stormed across the road. Karen, this ends now. You could have killed someone. What if Linda had driven over that? What if a kid had fallen on it? She didn't even flinch. Her lips curled into that all-too-familiar smirk. You should thank me. I'm just teaching you a lesson in responsibility. Maybe once your truck is gone, this neighborhood will finally look civilized. I was shaking, my fists clenched at my sides. You're sick. Do you even hear yourself? Her eyes glittered with arrogance. The HOA hears me. That's all that matters. And she turned, walking back inside as if she'd just won that night. Linda and I sat at the kitchen table, the letter from Karen lying between us like a curse. Mark, Linda whispered, tears welling in her eyes, I don't feel safe anymore. She's not just petty, she's dangerous. I took her hand, swallowing hard. I know, and I promise you she won't get away with this. We're going to end it, once and for all. I spent the next day installing more cameras front yard, backyard, even one disguised in the mailbox. If Karen wanted to keep playing games, I'd make sure every move was recorded. The breakthrough came sooner than I expected 2 nights later. At around 2 a.m., one of the cameras caught something chilling. Karen, dressed in dark clothes, crouching near my truck with a screwdriver. She wasn't putting down spike strips this time. She was trying to tamper with the brake lines. When I saw the footage, my blood ran cold. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was attempted sabotage that could have killed me or Linda. I drove straight to the police station with the video. Officer Daniels didn't even try to hide his shock. This isn't just vandalism, Mark. This is criminal. Attempted property damage with intent to harm. We're opening a case file tonight. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Finally, she had crossed the line so far that even she couldn't squirm her way out. The following morning, as I was drinking my coffee, I saw 2 police cruisers pull into the neighborhood. My heart pounded as officers walked across the street and knocked on Karen's door. She answered, wearing her robe clearly caught off guard. The moment she saw the police, her face twisted into outrage. What's the meaning of this? Do you know who I am? I'm the president of this HOA. Officer Daniels' voice was steady. Karen Whitmore. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding multiple acts of vandalism and endangerment. She sputtered, pointing toward my house. This is ridiculous. He's setting me up. He's been trying to destroy me from the beginning. But when the officers showed her the footage, the color drained from her face. She tried to recover, yelling at the neighbors who had gathered to watch. You're all blind. He's manipulating you. I was protecting this community, but no one moved. No one defended her for the first time. She was truly alone. As the officers guided her toward the cruiser, Karen twisted her neck to glare at me. Her voice was shrill, desperate. You'll regret this, Mark. You haven't seen the last of me. But the click of the handcuffs silenced her threats. Linda came out, wrapping her arms around me, her voice trembling. It's over, Mark. It's finally over. I exhaled, the weight of months of fear and frustration finally lifting off my shoulders. But deep down I knew Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. This wasn't the end. Not yet. Because when someone builds their life on power and control, losing it doesn't just break them, destroys them. And I had a feeling the worst storm was still ahead. The neighborhood had never been so quiet. After Karen was taken away in handcuffs, people stood in small groups, whispering to each other, shaking their heads as if they had just woken from a long nightmare. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But peace didn't last long. 2 days later, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Without Karen at the head of the table, the air felt different, lighter somehow. The board members looked nervous, like children who'd been caught siding with the wrong crowd. Mr. Harris spoke first. Neighbors, we all saw what happened. The footage, the arrest. We cannot allow someone like Karen to represent us anymore. Effective immediately, she is removed from her position as HOA president. Applause broke out. Some even cheered. But as I looked around, I saw something else in people's faces: shame. They had let her bully them for too long. Now they were realizing the cost. Linda leaned close and whispered, It's not just about Karen anymore. It's about all of us finding the courage to stand up. For a while, things settled. My driveway was clear, my yard repaired, and for the first time in years, HOA actually felt like a group of neighbors instead of a dictatorship. But I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her don't just fade quietly into the background, and I was right. One afternoon, Officer Daniels stopped by my house. His face was serious. "Mark, I wanted you to hear this from me first. Karen made bail. She's back in the neighborhood for now, awaiting trial." My stomach dropped. "You're telling me she's across the street again?" Daniels nodded. "Yes, and she's under strict orders not to contact you or your wife. One wrong move, and she's going back in cuffs for good." That night, Linda and I sat in the living room with the lights dimmed, staring out the window at the house across the street. Sure enough, her blinds twitched as she peeked out at us. The queen had lost her crown, but she was still watching, still plotting. The weeks that followed were tense. Karen didn't dare step on our property, but she made her presence known, slamming her trash can lids at dawn, glaring from her porch, muttering insults under her breath when she passed by. But the neighborhood had changed. Where once she had ruled with fear, now people ignored her. They crossed the street to avoid her, turned their backs when she spoke. Her kingdom had crumbled, and she was standing in the ruins. Alone, the final breaking point came on the day of her court hearing. The entire neighborhood seemed to buzz with anticipation. I sat in the courtroom with Linda beside me, palms sweaty as the judge entered. Karen walked in, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Gone was the polished, smug queen of the HOA. She looked tired, desperate. The prosecution played the videos, her laying down spike strips, tearing up my yard, tampering with my truck. Each clip chipped away at the little dignity she had left. When the footage of her crouching by my brake lines played, the room gasped. Even the judge's face hardened. Karen's lawyer tried to spin it. My client was simply enforcing community standards. The judge cut him off. "Community standards do not justify endangering lives. Mrs. Whitmore, your actions show a reckless disregard for safety, property, and the law." Karen's voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. "I was protecting the neighborhood. I was keeping it beautiful." The judge leaned forward. "No, Mrs. Whitmore, you were destroying it." The gavel struck. Karen was sentenced to probation, community service, and fines that would take years to pay. But more than that, she was barred from holding any HOA position ever again, as the bailiff guided her out. Karen turned her head toward me, eyes brimming with tears. For the first time, there was no anger in them, only emptiness. She had lost everything she thought gave her power. Back home that night, I sat on the porch with Linda. The air felt lighter, the street calmer. Neighbors walked by and waved, stopping to chat, to thank us for standing up. Linda rested her head on my shoulder. "You know, Mark, it wasn't just about us. Everyone was living in fear, and once you stood up, they realized they could too." I nodded, my throat tight. She wanted control, but all she did was teach us the value of community. Real community. Not rules, not power, people looking out for each other. Linda smiled softly. "Funny, isn't it? In the end, she gave us the one thing she never wanted us to have. Unity," I said. She squeezed my hand. In peace. Weeks later, I noticed something remarkable. The neighborhood looked different, not because of Karen's rules, but because people were finally free. Families put out wind chimes again. Kids rode bikes without being scolded. Even Mr. Harris built a little garden in his front yard, the same one Karen had once fined him for. For the first time in a long while, it felt like home. Sometimes I still catch myself glancing across the street. Her house sits there, quiet, blinds drawn, like a shadow of what once was. And though I don't hate high, pity high, know one thing for certain: control built on fear never lasts. Because no matter how sharp the spikes, no matter how tight the grip, people will always find a way to stand together. And when they do, even the strongest chains break. Neighbors. This story isn't just about an HOA or one difficult person. It's about courage. It's about standing up to what's wrong, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. And it's about remembering that true community is built on kindness, respect, and looking out for one another, not on fear or control. So if you've ever had a Karen in your life, remember you're not alone. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the strongest bonds. This story is just the beginning.
Wow.
There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.